today, which is intuition is simple and the intellect is complex. And intuition is simply soul knowledge. It's the most natural thing, and it's available to us all the time. It's just hidden behind the veil of our ego consciousness and our mind. And as we just heard in today's reading, the mind wants to dissect everything. It wants to analyze. It wants to label. It wants to separate and compartmentalize. And in that process, as we know, as we think all day long, we start to block out our intuitive nature, which is the most natural part of who we are. It's our soul nature. Yogananda said that the spiritual eye is our transmission station where we send out prayers, intentions, thoughts, and the heart is the receiving station where we receive divine inspiration. But energetically, it's really all connected. And in the song we heard this morning, in the Temple of Isis, still your heart, still your mind, still your soul, if you'd like to pray. And then in response to that prayer, we receive divine guidance, and it comes in a flash. We know we've all had that experience. Jesus said today, whosoever shall not receive the kingdom of God as a little child, he shall not enter therein. And when I read this, I couldn't help but think of Jaya. And last weekend, we had our beautiful Kriya retreat, and Jaya is like a spiritual redwood tree for us at Ananda. And congratulations to our 8 new Kriya bonds from Ananda Rhode Island. So proud of all of you, and many of you are here today. For those who are at home, we have many of our new Kriya bonds in church. But I wanted to tell you a little story about Jaya because Jaya is so childlike and joyful. And Kelly and I have known Jaya for more than 20 years, 2 decades, maybe going on 24 years. Jaya and his wife Sadhana Devi lived in Rhode Island, and they helped Prem Shanti and Om Prakash start the work here. So he's really our spiritual grandfather. And it was 20 years ago, just at the beginning of the month, that he and all of those ministers blessed my daughter, who just turned 20. So over the years that we've known him, we've just watched him become more and more joyful and childlike. And the reason why Jesus said that is because children don't have any criticism. They don't know how to criticize. They don't know how to judge. They're just open, beautiful, open. They're trusting, they're loving, they're kind. They have a lot of humility. And those are the qualities that we need to receive God's inspiration. So last Friday morning, before everyone came to the retreat center, Jaya and Deva Leela and Melissa and I were having tea and coffee in the sunroom, just relaxing and catching up. And I asked Jaya how he came to Ananda. How did he find Yogananda? And I love asking people, I call it the Yogananda origin story because every one of us has it. And it always involves intuition. In every case, there's some intuitive part of that story. So in Jaya's case, he was living in Berkeley, California. He had graduated from UC Berkeley and he was working. And he was, the way he describes it, he went into a metaphysical bookstore called Shambhala. And Shambhala is a publishing company that's still in Berkeley, California. And he went in, he was browsing the books, and he picked up AY and he looked at it and he read the back cover. And he said at the time there was another author who wrote metaphysical science fiction type books. And I can't remember the name, but he said they were very popular then. And when he looked at Yogananda's book, he kind of just put it in that category and he thought, oh, I've already read a lot of that. I'm not going to read this book. He went home and he said the next morning when he woke up, the cover of Autobiography was in his head, in his spiritual eye, just so strong. And he thought, wow, okay, there must be something to that book. I guess I'll go back and I'll get the book. He got the book and he read it. And at the end, he felt disappointed that Master wasn't in the physical body anymore. And he thought, gee, I really would have liked to have met that fellow, but it's too late. A couple of weeks went by and he was in his kitchen on a Sunday morning. He had had a party with all his friends the night before and he was cleaning up. And he said on Sunday mornings during that time, every radio station had to donate public broadcasting time. And I kind of remember that from the 70s. And that morning, this was a rock and roll radio station. So he turned it on hoping to hear rock and roll, but instead he heard Swami Kriyananda talking about the fact that he would be in the Bay Area giving classes. And if you were interested, to please send me a postcard. Now imagine, this is before the internet. You actually had to fill out a postcard and mail it to him with your address. I mean, yes, with your address. So he did that. Several weeks went by and he actually sort of forgot about it. And one day, lo and behold, he got a little flyer in the mail addressed to him advertising a 6-week series of classes on Kriya Yoga taught by Swami Kriyananda. Well, he got that in the afternoon and the class started that very night. And he said that along with the theme of rock and roll music and a lot of parties, he had a big party event that night. It was either a concert or something that he was supposed to go to with all his friends, and he really didn't want to miss that event. But something was pulling at him, and he said right up until the last minute when his friends pulled up to pick him up in the car, he wasn't sure, and then he just got a strong feeling that he should go to Swami Kriyananda's class. And the rest is history. That was 1968, and he's been at Ananda Village for going on 55 years now. It really took the direction of his life in that particular way. But as I said, I love to hear everybody's story about how they found Master. Some people it's through Swami Kriyananda, some directly through the AY, but everyone who tells their story has that moment where there was some intuitive component to the story. You know, either they couldn't read the book, but then they came back to it and it just completely changed their life, or they kept coming back over and over and over. And that's the soul basically guiding our lives and telling us this is the path for you in this incarnation. Um, Today, we hear intuition is simple and natural, and it's really our divine birthright. You know, again, it's the most natural thing. And intuition comes to us in all different ways. It can come in a flash, literally a sentence or a word or a picture, or a deep, deep stillness in our hearts. And one of the most powerful things about intuition is knowing when not to act. So sometimes we'll be in a situation where suddenly our heart in that calm moment like makes us realize that it's not the right time to speak or it's not the right time to act, especially when there's some conflict in your life, because that's more powerful, you know, when we listen to that divine guidance. And intuition comes to us through our chakras, through our energy centers. Everyone's had the feeling of danger, just a gut feeling, I shouldn't go down that road or I shouldn't do this or that. We also have it in dreams. We'll wake up with some feeling or knowing that that's the right way. We get it through each of the energy centers. And like I said before, even though the heart is the receiving station, the energy of the heart goes all the way up to the spiritual eye. And that's where we do receive, again, a lot of this inspiration. So our energy centers are doorways for this information, and all of our practices, especially Kriya Yoga, but practicing Hong Sa, we're slowly opening up that channel. And the more that we open up that channel, the more that we focus on the spiritual eye, the more readily that divine inspiration comes to us. And that's what it means to flow in God's grace, is when we get to the point in life where we just feel intuitively what the next step is in our life, what the next action to take or non-action to take, and to just sort of relax into that flow of God's grace. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm listening to, and maybe some of you have listened to this before. It's called the Telepathy Tapes. Has anyone heard of this? Have you heard it? Well, Keith, you work with adults that have autism. So this is a really, I highly, highly, highly recommend everyone listen. I'm listening to it on Spotify. I'm sure it's available everywhere. The Telepathy Tapes. And it's done by a documentary filmmaker, and she's working in coordination with scientists. And the gist of it is that they're working with children and young adults who have severe autism and are nonverbal. And the thing that combines or ties all these families together is that every one of the parents in these stories, there's multiple stories, were told at a certain point by physicians, psychologists, scientists that their children weren't in there. You know, just do the best you can with their physical needs, but mentally there's nothing there that you can tune into, even though they were sending the kids to school and everything. Well, it turns out not only is there something in there, but it's much higher than what we're able to experience with our five senses. So because the kids are nonverbal, they depend on intuitive and consciousness. And it's story after story about parents who, by training their children to use communication boards and iPads where they can type, it turns out that the kids know everything. And there's stories of, a mother is downstairs reading a book and her teenage child is upstairs in a bedroom. And when the mother comes back, he types out exactly what she was reading, sentence for sentence. So the podcast is about these scientists doing these telepathy experiments with the kids, and the kids are 100% right. They'll write down a sentence and the child can't see it and the child types out the sentence. They'll look at a picture in a book and the child types out tiger, lion, whatever it is. Um, and one of the mothers says to her child, do do you read other people's minds or just mine? Because the parents are very connected, and one mother thinks that the child actually shares her consciousness, because all of a sudden she realizes, like, oh my God, he's read all of my thoughts all these years and I didn't realize it. And the child said to her, we all communicate like this in my world. We all communicate like this in my world. And then it gets even more incredible, because it turns out that these children and young adults communicate with each other psychically across the country. They have their own channel of communication. One mother in Utah sent a Facebook message to one of the mothers in the podcast whose son is called Winston. And this little boy in Utah typed out to his mother that his best friend was Winston in Pennsylvania or wherever he lived. I mean, it's like you have to listen to this. It's really mind-boggling. And the funny part about it is, because today's reading is The Intellect is Complex, all these scientists and the filmmaker are coming up with more and more experiments for these kids to do. And the kids are just like, well, this is our reality, that this is our reality. One of the cameramen, who was an atheist, now believes in God because of this. So these kids not only have this ability through their consciousness to read other people's minds and emotions, but they also have spiritual gifts. And everyone who's come in contact with them through this project, now there's people that were non-believers who are believers. One child told his mother that rocks and minerals and plants and animals also, he can feel their energy. And he said there's good rocks and bad rocks. you know, Someone gave his mother some rocks that they prayed over, and the mother is a born again Christian or something. And at first she just thought, what am I going to do with these rocks? And her son, as she had that thought, someone gave her 3 stones. Her son came running downstairs, her nonverbal son, and took the rocks up to his bedroom and put them out on his dresser, and then typed to her, these rocks are good rocks. I can feel the prayer in the rock. So anyway, it's just a beautiful example of how that's our natural state. And that's in the Treta Yuga and the Satya Yuga. That's how we're all going to communicate. That will be our form of communication. And we have that now too. We can do that now. We can send each other thoughts now. The important part is, a lot of times we get this information and right away our mind discounts it. Right away our mind tells us it's not right, or we don't follow the inspiration or the intuition. Instead, the ego steps in and we take a different path. And then in hindsight, we look back and think, oh, I had that feeling, I had that thought, I had that message. If only I had listened. But that's okay. That's how we learn. When it happens a few times, suddenly we get to the point when we get that intuitive message, we follow, and that's really what this is all about. Yogananda talked about the importance of silence. So silence is the altar and the doorway to God. And all of our practices cultivate silence. That's why Yogananda told us, and this is for the new Kriya Bonds and for all of us, when we're done with our techniques, and Hong Sa is considered a technique, Kriya is considered a technique, it's vitally important that we then spend time in silence without the techniques, because it's during that time of silence when we do our Hong Sa practice, our Kriya practice, we're creating this electromagnetic field that's a purification energy in the spine. And in the silence, we start to open up those energy centers. That energy is opening us to intuition. And it's in those moments of silence that we receive God's guidance, God's grace. From the autobiography of a yogi, intuition is soul guidance appearing naturally in man during those instants when his mind is calm. Now, notice Yogananda used the word instant, and that's how intuition comes in an instant, in a flash. And sometimes we aren't maybe in meditation, but maybe we wake up, we have that moment, or we're walking down the street, we're walking in nature, and suddenly we have that moment. So it's not the days or the hours or the months, it's those instants every day where we can get really quiet in mind, body, and heart, and we can have that beautiful opening of God's presence in our life. So the highest form of intuition is attunement to the guru, and we're all practicing that. So that's the highest form of intuition, is just attuning our consciousness to that of the great master. Because when we're really in attunement, we receive everything we need at the time we need it. Every thought, every action, everything. I will go forth in perfect faith, in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time I need it. That's also an act of attunement to God and intuitive understanding that we are receiving exactly what we need from God. So basically think about that this week during your meditation, and even when you're walking outside in the woods, or you're sitting and having your tea in the morning, just think about how quiet can you make your mind. And that's why we do these techniques. How quiet can we make our heart? How quiet can we make our soul, so that we can open ourselves to that consciousness? That's all that intuition is. It's our soul consciousness, and just allowing that soul consciousness to break through the veil of the mind and the ego that keeps us, in that loop of thoughts. So again, attune to the guru and find that quiet in your heart, in your soul, and allow God's intuition to guide your life.